Joining us on the phones right now, there's a event going on over at Texas Tech University during the special lecture series, Freedom, Text, and Context. And joining us on the phones right now from Southern Methodist University, Dr. Robert Lawson. He's the Centennial Chair in Economic Freedom over at SMU. And Dr. Lawson, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Doing great. Good morning.
Appreciate you coming on with us. You'll be speaking over at Texas Tech relatively soon, correct?
I'll be there on Monday talking at 5:30, I think, on campus. Going to talk about economic freedom and political freedom, democracy, and how it's all working together.
Well,
working together.
And that's something that obviously top of mind, or should be top of mind for a lot of folks out there with this presidential election that's going on. Talk a little bit about your work with economic freedom.
Sure. Well, for the last 25 years or so, I've been working on an economic freedom index. It's called Economic Freedom of the World. It's published by the Fraser Institute in Canada. And what we do is we try to put a number on how economically free a country is. So Hong Kong is number one. They're easily the freest country. Venezuela is last. They're 157th out of 157 countries that we rate. So we gather data on everything from taxes to tariffs to money supply, inflation, how many days it takes to start a business. We gather all this data, and we kind of turn it into an index, and every year we come out with it. That's what I'm going to be talking about mostly during my visit.
In the year 2000, and I've been following this Economic Freedom Index, and I've had many guests on throughout the years who have talked about and have referenced your work and this. And in the year 2000, the United States, number 2 in the world, correct?
Absolutely, second in the world.
Now we're at number 16 and maybe even lower than that, right?
16th right now, indeed. Yeah. So
what happened?
We peaked in 2000, and ever since 2000, it's been going down. A tick here, a tick there, and pretty soon, as they say, it adds up.
So what happened? What happened in the United States between 2000 and I think the last available stats were 2013?
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that most business conservatives will highlight is taxes, and it's definitely true. Taxation and government spending is higher today than it was in 2000 at the end of the Clinton administration, just the beginning of the Bush administration. But that's not really the big thing, although that's a factor. But the big factor for us in the data we track is in the area of property rights. We have some data from the World Economic Forum, some data from the World Bank on the security of property rights, the efficiency of court systems, the impartiality of judges. Some of these things are survey-based, but just to give you an indication, the World Economic Forum data for impartial courts for the United States used to be a 9 out of 10, now it's like a 6.5 out of 10. So big declines across the board. We have like 9 variables there. So it's across the board. Property rights are weaker. I think it's a lot of things. I think it's taking your shoes off at the airports. I think it's RICO, asset forfeiture, which is a gross violation of property rights. I think it's the Chrysler and GM bondholders who got basically, I don't know what the technical word is, screwed, I think is the word, out of their money. I mean, so there's a lot of things going on in the legal system and the property rights world that I think are really the big problems for the United States.
How does the United States, and how do we turn things around? Because I assume that's what many, and when you're looking at this, you would probably like to turn things around. So how do we begin to dig ourselves out of this hole?
Yeah, this is where it's really pessimistic, I'm afraid. If it was just taxes went up, that's actually pretty easy to fix. You just lower taxes. It's been done before. Every so often we've done it. Reagan did it. Kennedy did it, for that matter. So, but unfortunately, if it's this property rights thing, if it's kind of creeping crony capitalism and a judicial system that isn't impartially enforcing the rule of law, I don't know how to fix that. You don't just pass a new law saying, "Hey, let's have rule of law now."
Right.
Those, taxes, tariffs, money supply, those things are policy variables that are easy to correct if you've got them, going the wrong direction. When you get into this area of property rights, you're almost talking about legal and political culture. And that's unfortunately really hard to fix. I mean, talking about it helps. I mean, doing what we're doing right now. But it's not like you're just going to pass a new law in Congress to fix that problem. We need to talk about it and highlight the problems if we're going to have any chance of correcting this kind of cultural shift in the legal and political property rights environment.
We're visiting with Dr. Robert Lawson here on the Chad Hasty Show. When you hear the presidential candidates speak, and of course, immigration gains headlines. There are a lot of other things that gain headlines. Do you hear any of the candidates speak to the issue of economic freedom better than others? Are they talking about it enough in your mind?
Well, they're definitely not talking about it enough. I mean, among the current crop of candidates, it's pretty bleak from an economic freedom point of view. Even on the Republican side, when it comes to taxation, trade restrictions, there's a huge protectionist sentiment running around. That's the opposite of free trade is what we're talking about. Some of the anti-immigrant thing, I look at immigration as being a type of free trade. The free movement of people is, I think, every bit as important as the free movement of goods and services. And that talk is against economic freedom, too. There's not a lot of bright spots right now among the current political crop that we're looking at.
What is the, I guess, real impact on people? Because when they hear economic freedom index, they go, okay, well, it's interesting that we're not number one or number two. Whenever people hear freedom, they go United States, number one, number two. We got to be. When you're 16, what's the real impact on Americans in your mind?
Well, we've done some research on economic growth and economic freedom, and a lot of people have. This is probably the one area that's the most well researched by academics. And the decline that the U.S. has seen since 2000, it's been about 1 point on our index. 1 point doesn't really mean anything; it's just an index number. But a 1 point decline in our index correlates across the world with about a 1 percentage point decline in long-term economic growth. And so, for the United States context, that means that we would estimate instead of growing at, say, 3% a year, we're going to grow at 2% a year. That doesn't sound like a huge difference. And I don't know how old you are, Chad, but even at my age, it's not going to really affect my standard of living. But if you grow at 2% versus 3%, it's going to affect your kids' standard of living, and certainly your grandkids. Compound growth rates are a real thing, and I really worry about leaving our kids with a sort of permanent lower growth rate because we've saddled the next generation, our generation, the next generation, with less economic freedom than we enjoyed when we were younger.
Visiting with Dr. Robert Lawson, you'll be speaking over at Texas Tech University, the Student Union Building, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. on February 29th. This is all part of the Institute for the Study of Western Civilization. Appreciate your time here on the show today. I guess tell folks where they can find maybe more information about yourself and also about your work.
The easiest way to find information about us is go to our website, which is o'neillcenter.org.
All right, fantastic. Appreciate your time today.
All right, thanks.
Have a good one. That's Dr. Robert Lawson of SMU here on the program. He'll be speaking over at Texas Tech University.